Four identical 10-year-old girls stood shivering in designer coats and jewels. No, wait. They stood in rags, their faces hollow with hunger, asking the richest audience in the city, "If all four of us sing for you, will you give us bread?" The laughter that followed would haunt that theater forever. Hello friends, welcome to Stories by Jason. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, please let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The rain fell like needles on the marble steps of the Williams Theater, each drop echoing against stone that cost more than most people earned in a year. Inside, golden light spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting warm halos on the wet pavement. Laughter and champagne glasses clinked. Furs and diamonds glittered. The city's elite had gathered for the season's most prestigious performance, a celebration of talent, wealth, and exclusivity. Outside, pressed against the iron gates like shadows the light refused to touch, four little girls were freezing to death. Catherine saw her breath form clouds in the November air. Beside her, Christine's lips had gone pale, almost blue. Clara kept rubbing her arms, trying to generate warmth that wouldn't come. And Camille, sweet Camille, the youngest by 17 minutes, had stopped shivering altogether, which Catherine knew was worse. They were identical in every way except their voices. Four 10-year-old girls with the same honey-brown eyes, the same delicate features that had once been called angelic when their mother was alive, the same dark hair now matted and filthy from weeks of sleeping in subway stations and cardboard shelters, the same hunger carved into their faces like a sculptor's cruel joke. "Mama said we should never beg," Christine whispered, her voice cracking. Catherine felt the words hit her chest like a fist. Their mother, Helen Harper, once a rising star, a pianist and vocalist who had filled small venues with standing ovations, whose name had been whispered as the next great talent before everything fell apart, before the pregnancy no one knew about, before the father who disappeared, before the poverty that swallowed them whole, before the cancer that took her 6 weeks ago. "Mama also said we should survive," Catherine replied, trying to sound brave. She was the oldest, by 12 minutes, and that meant something. It had to mean something. She said our voices were gifts, that we could share them with the world. "The world doesn't want gifts from dirty children," Clara said bitterly. At 10 years old, she already understood rejection better than most adults. Catherine looked at her sisters, really looked at them. Their coats were thin rags held together by safety pins and prayers. Their shoes had holes. Christine's left foot was wrapped in newspaper because the sole had completely fallen off yesterday. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. The shelter had turned them away because they were too many and causing disruption, when Clara had coughed all night from the cold settling into her lungs. Tomorrow they might not wake up. The streets were killing children every winter. Catherine had seen it. The small bodies covered with sheets, the ambulances that came too late, the way people stepped over them like they were trash. "Look," Catherine said, pointing through the ornate gates at the theater entrance. "Do you see that poster?" The banner stretched across the marble facade. "An evening with Desmond Jackson and Madame Esther, a celebration of musical excellence." "Mama knew Desmond Jackson," Catherine continued, her mind racing. "She told me once that they performed together years ago before we were born. She said he was kind back then." "That was before he became famous," Christine said softly. "People change when they get money." "Maybe," Catherine admitted. "But inside that theater they have food, they have warmth, and they have a piano." Her voice grew stronger, fueled by desperation and a spark of something that might have been hope or might have been delusion. "Mama taught us everything she knew. We can sing, all four of us. We can harmonize like she showed us, and Clara can play piano almost as well as Mama could." Clara's eyes widened. "Kathy, I can't. I haven't practiced in weeks. "You played on that broken keyboard in the subway station 2 days ago and made people cry," Catherine interrupted. "I saw them. They dropped coins in our cup, and some of them actually stopped to listen." 37 cents, Camille whispered, speaking for the first time in an hour. "We made 37 cents and an old sandwich." Catherine's heart broke and hardened simultaneously. 37 cents, for her sister's gift, for music that should have filled concert halls. "I'm going to ask them," Catherine decided, standing up on legs that shook from more than just cold. I'm going to walk up to that door and ask if we can perform. Just once. Just for some food. Even leftovers from their fancy dinner. They're going to throw away more food tonight than we've seen in a week. They'll say no, Clara predicted, but she stood up too. They'll laugh at us, Christine added, joining them. They'll call security, Camille finished, rising on unsteady feet. Catherine looked at her sisters, her mirrors, her family, her entire world, and saw the same desperate hope flickering in their eyes that she felt in her chest. They were already dying. What was one more humiliation compared to that? Then we try anyway, Catherine said, because that's what Mama would do. She faced rejection 100 times and kept singing. She told me, her voice caught, remembering the hospital room, the machines, the way her mother's hand had felt so fragile in hers. She told me that our voices could open doors that our circumstances had closed. She said that music was more powerful than money, than status, than anything. She also said our father loved her, Christine said quietly, and he still left. The words hung in the freezing air like an accusation. Their father, the mystery that their mother had carried to her grave. She'd only spoken of him once in those final days when the morphine made her walls crumble. A man of wealth and power, she'd said. A man whose family had destroyed her career when they discovered the affair. A man who never knew she was pregnant because his father had made sure they never spoke again. A man who might be inside that very theater right now, for all they knew, warm and fed, and completely unaware that his 4 daughters were freezing outside. Catherine pushed the thought away. It didn't matter. Whoever he was, he'd made his choice 10 years ago. They had only themselves now, and maybe, just maybe, one chance tonight. Come on, she said, taking Christine's hand, then Clara's, then Camille's. We walk up together. We ask together. We're quadruplets. Maybe that's interesting enough to get their attention. Maybe they've never seen 4 identical girls who can sing in perfect harmony. They moved as one toward the entrance, 4 small figures in rags approaching a palace of light. The doorman saw them coming, and his face immediately shifted to disgust. No beggars, he barked before they'd even reached the steps. This is a private event. Move along. Please, sir, Catherine said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We're not asking for money. We just want a chance to perform just one song. We can sing, all 4 of us, and our sister plays piano. If you let us perform just for a few minutes, we'll work for food. Any food, even scraps from the kitchen. The doorman laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You want to perform here at the Williams Theater? Do you have any idea what it costs to rent this venue for an hour? Do you know who's inside? Senators, CEOs, the mayor himself. We know it's fancy, Clara said, her small voice braver than Catherine expected. That's why we came. Because fancy people appreciate real music, and we're really good. Our mother taught us. She was Helen Harper, maybe you've heard of. I don't care if your mother was Maria Callas herself, the doorman interrupted. You're not getting in, you're filthy, you smell, and you're making the entrance look bad. Now get lost before I call the police. We're not criminals, Christine protested. We're just hungry. Then go to a shelter. This is a theater, not a soup kitchen. Please, Camille whispered, and something in her voice, the pure, desperate innocence of it, made even the doorman pause for a half-second. But only a half-second. I said no. Now move or I'll move you myself. Catherine felt her sister's hands tighten around hers. She felt the cold seeping deeper into her bones. She felt the hope that had been so fragile beginning to crack. And then she heard it, music floating from inside. A piano, a voice. Applause. The performance had begun. Come on, she whispered to her sisters, pulling them away from the doorman's glare. Around the side, there has to be another entrance, a kitchen door, a service entrance, something. Kathy, Clara started. We didn't come this far to give up now, Catherine insisted, her jaw set with a determination that surprised even herself. Mama didn't raise quitters. She sang on street corners when no one would book her. She performed in subway stations when clubs closed their doors. She never gave up on music, and we won't give up on this. They crept around the side of the building, staying in the shadows, 4 small ghosts haunting the edges of luxury. And there, a service entrance, propped open with a crate while staff moved between the kitchen and the backstage area. Catherine's heart hammered. This was it. This was their chance. When we get inside, she whispered to her sisters, we stay quiet. We find the backstage. We wait for a break between performances. And then we ask politely, respectfully, if we can have just 5 minutes on that stage. And if they say no, Christine asked. Catherine looked at each of her sisters, seeing in their faces the same hunger, the same cold, the same desperate need to prove that they mattered, that they existed, that their mother's legacy lived in them. Then we make them listen anyway, she said. And together, holding hands tight enough to share courage and fear in equal measure, the four girls slipped through the service entrance and into the warmth. The backstage area of the Williams Theater was chaos organized into elegant efficiency. Staff members rushed past carrying champagne flutes and silver platters. Musicians checked instruments. Performers touched up makeup in mirrors surrounded by lights bright enough to hurt. And four small girls in rags pressed themselves against a wall, trying to be invisible. Catherine's eyes adjusted to the brightness, and she felt Christine trembling beside her, from cold, from fear, from the overwhelming strangeness of being inside a place they had no right to occupy. They were intruders in a world that sparkled with wealth so casual it seemed obscene. "Look," Clara whispered, pointing at a catering table laden with food. Platters of shrimp, tiny sandwiches, pastries that looked like art, fruit carved into flowers. Catherine's stomach twisted so hard she had to press her hand against her abdomen. When was the last time they'd eaten? Really eaten? Not scraps or handouts, but actual food. "Don't," she warned her sisters, seeing the hunger in their eyes. "If we steal, they'll throw us out for sure. We have to do this right." "How is any of this right?" Clara hissed. "We're sneaking around like criminals just to ask for a chance to sing for scraps." Before Catherine could respond, a door burst open and a man swept into the backstage area like he owned the air itself. Desmond Jackson. Catherine recognized him from the posters, but in person, he was larger than life, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored tuxedo, his dark skin glowing under the lights, his presence commanding immediate attention. "That was perfection," he announced to no one and everyone. "The crowd is eating from my hand. This is what real talent looks like, people. This is what years of training and natural gift produce." Behind him, a woman glided in, Madame Esther, her silver hair piled high, her gown dripping with crystals, her face set in an expression of permanent superiority. "The acoustics in this theater are divine," she said, her accent thick and affected. "Though I must say the audience is rather pedestrian. I've performed for royalty who showed more genuine appreciation." "They're here for culture they barely understand," Desmond agreed with a laugh. "But they pay well, and that's what matters." Catherine felt something curdle in her chest. This was the kind man her mother had remembered, this arrogant peacock. "We should go," Christine whispered. "They're not going to help us." But before Catherine could respond, a staff member rushed past them and stopped dead, staring. "What the woman's eyes went wide. "How did you get in here, security?" Suddenly all eyes turned to the four girls pressed against the wall. The laughter and chatter died. For a moment, there was only silence and staring. "Oh my God," someone muttered. "Are those street children?" "They're identical," another voice said. "All four of them." "They're filthy. Someone call security." Catherine felt her sisters pressing closer to her, felt Clara's hand shaking in hers. But she forced herself to stand straighter, to meet the eyes of the people staring at them like they were exhibits in a zoo. "Please," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "We just want a chance to perform. We can sing, all four of us. And our sister plays piano, just one song. We're not asking for money, just food. Any leftovers you were going to throw away, please." The silence that followed was worse than the murmurs. And then Desmond Jackson laughed. It started as a chuckle and built into a full, booming laugh that echoed off the walls. "Perform," he repeated, incredulous. You want to perform at the Williams Theater." He turned to Madame Esther. "Do you hear this? These street urchins want to grace the same stage where you just performed Puccini." Madame Esther's lip curled. "How did they even get in? This is a security disaster. They probably have lice, diseases. Get them out before they contaminate the entire backstage." "We're not sick," Clara said defensively. "We're just hungry." "Hunger makes people desperate," Desmond said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "And desperation makes them delusional. Let me guess, Your mother told you that you had special voices and that the world would recognize your talent. He laughed again. Every beggar's mother thinks their child is special. Our mother was Helen Harper, Catherine said, the name coming out sharper than she intended. She was a real singer, a real musician, and she did teach us. We've been training since we could talk. For a split second, just a flash, something shifted in Desmond's face. Recognition, memory, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by cold contempt. Helen Harper, he said slowly. I knew a Helen Harper once, decent voice, no discipline, got herself pregnant and destroyed her own career with poor choices. That your mother? Catherine felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She died 6 weeks ago, cancer. She made us promise to keep singing. How touching, Madame Esther said, her voice dripping sarcasm. A deathbed promise, very theatrical. But darling, this is the Williams Theater, not a charity case showcase. Real performers spend years, decades hunting their craft. We don't just walk in off the streets and demand stages. We're not demanding, Christine said quietly. We're begging, there's a difference. The words hung in the air like an indictment. A security guard had arrived, his hand already reaching for Catherine's arm. Come on, kids, time to go, you've had your fun. Wait, Catherine said desperately, pulling away from his grip. Just listen for 30 seconds, please, just listen to us sing. If we're terrible, we'll leave quietly, we promise. But if we're good, if we're even just okay, please let us perform for the audience. One song, that's all. Absolutely not, Madame Esther said firmly. The very idea is absurd. Insulting, actually. Do you know how many people audition for years just to get a callback for this venue? And you think you can just walk in and... Let them try, a voice said from behind. Everyone turned. A young stagehand, he couldn't have been more than 20, stood there holding a coil of cable. I mean, what's the harm? If they're terrible, we all get a good laugh. If they're actually good, he shrugged. Wouldn't that be something? James, you're out of line, Desmond snapped. I'm just saying, sir, it's unusual, 4 identical girls. The audience might find it interesting, novel. Catherine saw the calculation flash through Desmond's eyes. She saw him weighing options, and for one horrible, hope-filled moment, she thought he might actually agree. No, he said finally, absolutely not. This is a prestigious event, not a circus act. Security, remove them now. The guard's grip tightened on Catherine's arm, and she felt her sisters being pulled away from her. Panic flooded her system. Please, she shouted, no longer caring about dignity or pride. We're starving, we're dying out there, just one chance, that's all we're asking. One chance to prove we're worth something. You're worth nothing, Madame Esther said coldly. Street children are worth nothing. That's why you're on the street. Now get out before I have you arrested for trespassing. The guard was dragging them toward the service exit. Catherine could see the alley beyond, the darkness, the cold. She could feel the last shreds of hope being ripped away. And something inside her snapped. We're sneaking back in, she whispered to her sisters as they were shoved through the door. I don't care what we have to do, we're getting on that stage. Kathy, they'll call the police, Clara protested. Then they call the police, but we didn't come this far to give up now. Mama said our voices could open doors. Maybe she was wrong about which doors. Maybe it's not about asking permission. Maybe it's about making them listen. In the alley they huddled together, formulating a plan. The service entrance was now guarded, but there was a window, high up, probably leading to a storage room. It was open just a crack for ventilation. I can fit, Camille said, understanding immediately. I'm the smallest. 10 minutes later, Camille had climbed through with Clara's boost, then opened a side door from the inside. They crept back through hallways, staying low, moving like shadows. They could hear applause from the main theater. Another performance ending. The intermission would be soon. The piano, Catherine whispered. During intermission, someone will leave it on stage. That's our chance. We wait until the audience is settling back in their seats and then we just walk out, before anyone can stop us. They'll tackle us off the stage, Christine said. Maybe, Catherine agreed. But maybe we'll get a few notes out first. Maybe someone will hear us. Maybe. Maybe we'll make Mama proud, Clara finished softly. They waited in the wings, hearts pounding, watching as Desmond Jackson took the stage for his final number of the first half. He was magnificent, Catherine had to admit it. His voice filled the theater like liquid gold. The audience was mesmerized. And Catherine felt sick with envy and admiration and anger all mixed together. That could have been their mother up there. Should have been. If not for poverty, if not for pregnancy, if not for a father who disappeared and a family that destroyed her. The song ended. Applause thundered. Desmond bowed, soaking in adoration like he was born for it. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, his voice smooth as silk. "We'll take a brief intermission, and then Madame Esther and I will return for the second half of this magnificent evening." He walked off stage. The curtain fell. The audience began to stand, stretching, heading for drinks and bathrooms. "Now," Catherine whispered. They moved as one, 4 identical girls in rags, running across the stage before anyone could process what was happening. Clara slid onto the piano bench. Catherine grabbed the microphone Desmond had left behind. And for one perfect, suspended moment, they were exactly where they were supposed to be. Then the shouting started. "What the? Security! Those kids again! Get them off the stage!" The curtain began to rise. Someone backstage had hit the wrong button in the chaos. And suddenly, the 4 girls were visible to the entire audience. Hundreds of faces turned toward them in confusion and shock. Catherine saw it all in a heartbeat. The diamond necklaces, the designer suits, the wine glasses hovering mid-sip. The elite of the city, staring at 4 filthy children who had invaded their sanctuary. She opened her mouth to speak, but Desmond Jackson was faster. He stormed onto the stage, his face twisted with rage. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption," he announced, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "These children are not part of the program. They are trespassers who will be removed immediately." "Please," Catherine shouted into the microphone before he could take it. "Just let us sing one song, just one. We can play and sing and—" Laughter rippled through the audience. Not kind laughter, mocking laughter, the sound of people entertained by absurdity. "Look at them," someone in the front row said loudly enough to be heard. "They're identical, like a sad little matching set." More laughter. "This is ridiculous," a woman in furs complained. "I paid $500 for this ticket, and I'm watching street urchins interrupt the performance." "Make them dance," someone shouted from the back. "If they want to entertain, make them dance like little trained monkeys." The laughter grew louder, crueler. Catherine felt Clara's hand grab hers, felt Christine's face pressed against her shoulder, felt Camille trembling beside her. "You want to perform," Desmond hissed, grabbing the microphone back. "Fine, perform. Show everyone what talent looks like when it comes from the gutter." He shoved Catherine toward the piano. Clara's hands found the keys, shaking so hard the first notes came out discordant. "Pathetic," Madame Esther declared from the wings, loud enough for the whole theater to hear. Someone in the audience threw something, a wadded-up program, that hit Christine's shoulder. "Get off the stage. This is embarrassing. Where's security?" Clara tried to play their mother's lullaby, the song they'd practiced 1,000 times, but her hands wouldn't cooperate. The notes stumbled and fell. And then someone threw a bottle. It came from the upper balcony, a champagne bottle, probably empty, but heavy enough. It arced through the air in slow motion and struck Catherine's temple with a sound that echoed through the stunned theater. She fell. Blood trickled down her face, warm and wet. Her sisters screamed. The audience gasped, some in shock, some in satisfaction that the disruption was ending. Catherine's vision blurred. She could hear her sisters crying, could hear Desmond yelling at them to get off the stage, could hear the audience's murmurs turning to bored impatience, ready to move on with their evening. This was it. This was how it ended, not with discovery, not with validation, but with humiliation, blood, and brutal proof that the world had no place for 4 little girls who dared to dream. And then she heard new footsteps. Heavy, purposeful, angry. A voice she didn't recognize, deep, commanding, furious, cut through the chaos like a blade. "Stop, everyone, stop right now." Lucas Williams had arrived at his own theater late as usual. Business in Chicago had run long, a property acquisition that required his signature, negotiations that couldn't wait. At 55, He'd built an empire of theaters, galleries, and performance spaces across the country. The Williams Theater in Manhattan was his crown jewel, the place where his father had started their family legacy, where Lucas had learned that art was both sanctuary and business. He'd missed the first half of the performance, but that was fine. He'd heard Desmond Jackson and Madame Esther perform 100 times. He was here for appearances, for the social obligations that came with wealth and influence. His assistant had texted him updates, standing ovations, rave reviews, the mayor personally complimenting the venue. Everything was perfect, until he walked through the main entrance and heard screaming. Lucas ran toward the theater doors, his security team scrambling behind him. The sounds were wrong, not applause or music, but chaos, shouting, a child crying. He burst through the doors into the main theater and froze. 4 little girls stood on his stage, identical, tiny, dressed in rags that might have once been coats. One was bleeding from her head, being held by her sisters, and the entire audience was jeering, laughing, some still throwing things at the children while his staff tried to restore order. "What the hell is happening here?" Lucas roared, his voice cutting through the noise like thunder. Every head turned. The theater fell silent so fast it was like someone had hit a mute button. Desmond Jackson stepped forward, his expression shifting instantly to professional deference. "Mr. Williams, I apologize for the disruption. These children broke into the theater. We were just removing them when someone threw a bottle at a child's head," Lucas interrupted, his eyes sweeping the audience with barely contained rage. "In my theater. Someone assaulted a child in my theater." "Sir, they're trespassers," Madame Esther interjected. "They disrupted the entire performance. They demanded to sing, can you imagine?" "I can imagine 4 children desperate enough to break into a theater," Lucas said coldly. "What I can't imagine is an audience of supposed civilized people attacking children." He strode toward the stage, and the crowd parted for him instinctively. Lucas Williams was not a man you stood in the way of. He'd built his reputation on fair dealing and fierce protection of his venues and artists, but also on a moral compass that had never quite aligned with the ruthless business practices his father had preferred. Up close the girls looked even worse, malnourished, freezing, terrified. The one who'd been hit was clearly trying not to cry, her face twisted with the effort. "Let me see," Lucas said gently, kneeling down. "Let me look at your head." Catherine flinched back, not trusting kindness from anyone in this place. "I won't hurt you," he promised. "I'm Lucas Williams, I own this theater, and I'm very sorry for what just happened." Slowly, Catherine let him examine the wound. It wasn't deep, a bruise forming, a small cut that had bled more than it should. Nothing requiring stitches, but it had to hurt like hell. "What are your names?" he asked quietly. "Catherine," she whispered, "and my sisters Christine, Clara, and Camille were quadruplets." Lucas felt something twist in his chest. Quadruplets. 4 identical daughters. Something about them, the shape of their faces, the color of their eyes, triggered a memory he couldn't quite place. "Why did you come here?" he asked. "We wanted to perform," Catherine said, her voice gaining strength. "We can sing. Our mother taught us," she said. "She said music could save us, that if we were good enough, talented enough, someone would give us a chance." "Your mother was a musician?" "Yes, sir, she was. She was wonderful. She sang and played piano. She told us stories about performing, about stages like this, about audiences who understood beauty." Catherine's voice broke. "She died 6 weeks ago, and we have nothing. No one, we're homeless. We just wanted to sing for food, that's all, just some bread or something. We weren't trying to cause trouble." Lucas felt the words hit him like physical blows. A musician mother, dead. These girls alone in the world. "What was your mother's name?" he heard himself ask, though some part of him already knew. Some part of him that had been waiting for this moment for 10 years without knowing it. "Helen Harper," Catherine said. The theater spun. Lucas gripped the edge of the piano to steady himself. Helen Harper, the woman he'd loved more than breathing, the woman his father had destroyed, the woman who disappeared from his life without explanation, without a word, leaving him broken and searching for answers he'd never found. "Helen Harper," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "She was. How old are you?" 10, Catherine said. "All of us. We were born 10 years ago, March 15th. Lucas did the math instantly. 10 years ago, March, which meant conception in June, 10 years and 9 months ago. The exact month when his father had discovered his relationship with Helen. The exact month when she'd vanished from his life. The exact month when his father had told him she'd taken money to leave, that she'd never loved him, that she was just a gold digger using him for his family's wealth. Lies, all of it had been lies. "Did your mother ever talk about your father?" Lucas asked, his hands shaking. Catherine exchanged glances with her sisters. Only once, at the end when she was dying. She said our father was a good man from a bad family. She said he didn't know about us. She said his father made sure they never spoke again, destroyed her career, made her disappear. She said she loved him until the day she died, but he was from a different world and some bridges can't be crossed. Lucas closed his eyes, saw Helen's face as he'd last seen her, radiant after a performance at a small club, her eyes shining with dreams and hope. Remembered the way she laughed, the way she played piano with such passion it made his chest ache, the way she'd told him she loved him in that tiny apartment she'd shared with 2 other struggling artists. And then she was gone, just gone. His father had explained it all so carefully. She'd taken a large sum of money and left the city. She'd made it clear she wanted nothing more to do with the Williams family. She'd been using Lucas all along. Lucas had been 25, heartbroken, naive enough to believe his father. He tried to find her anyway, but she'd vanished completely. No phone number, no address, no mutual friends who knew where she'd gone, like she'd been erased from existence. Because she had been, his father had made sure of it. "Mr. Williams," Catherine's voice broke through his memories. "Sir, are you okay?" Lucas opened his eyes and looked at the 4 girls standing before him. Helen's daughters, his daughters, 10 years old, which meant Helen had been pregnant when she disappeared. Pregnant and alone, destroyed by his father's cruelty, probably terrified and desperate. She'd carried quadruplets by herself, given birth alone, raised 4 daughters in poverty while he'd been living in luxury, completely unaware that his children existed. The guilt nearly buckled his knees. "Did she," his voice cracked, "did she ever tell you your father's name?" Catherine shook her head. She said it didn't matter, that he lived in a different world. She said someday we might figure it out ourselves, but she made us promise not to look for him. She said it would only bring pain. "She was wrong," Lucas said roughly. He stood, facing the 4 girls who had his eyes, Helen's eyes and his mother's delicate bone structure, and Helen's musical talent and features that were suddenly, blindingly obvious. "She was wrong about the pain, and she was wrong about your father." He turned to face the audience, his audience, full of people who just watched children be humiliated and assaulted and done nothing. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of his theater, "I need to make an announcement. These 4 girls are not trespassers. They are not street urchins. They are my daughters." The gasp that went through the crowd was audible. Behind him, he heard the girls' sharp intake of breath. "I didn't know they existed until 5 minutes ago," Lucas continued, his voice hard. "Their mother, the woman I loved more than anything in this world, was driven away by my father when she became pregnant. I searched for her for years. I never found her. I never knew she'd had my children. And now she's dead, and my daughters, my 4 beautiful, talented, desperate daughters, came to my theater begging for bread." He turned to Desmond Jackson and Madame Esther, who stood frozen in the wings. "You laughed at them," he said quietly, dangerously. "You mocked them, you threw them out like garbage, and you," he pointed at the audience, "you threw a bottle at a child's head, in my theater, at my daughter." "Mr. Williams, we didn't know," Desmond started. "You didn't need to know, they were children, that should have been enough." Lucas walked back to the girls, knelt down again. "Catherine, Christine, Clara, Camille, I'm so sorry for everything, for not finding your mother, for not being there, for what just happened here tonight. But that changes now, right now." "You're really our father," Christine whispered. "Yes, I loved your mother. I never stopped loving her even after I thought she'd left me, and I already love you because you're hers and mine." He stood, addressing the audience again. "Clear the first 3 rows. These seats are now reserved for my daughter's family, meaning themselves, since apparently that's all they have. And you," he pointed at Desmond and Madame Esther, "you're fired, effective immediately. Get out of my theater." "You can't," Madame Esther sputtered. "I own this building. I can do whatever I want. And what I want is for you to leave and never come back." He turned to the girls. "Your mother said you could sing." Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "Then sing, please. I've missed 10 years of your lives. Let me hear what she taught you. Let me hear her legacy." Catherine couldn't process what was happening. Her mind had splintered into 1,000 pieces. This man is our father. He loved Mama. He didn't know about us. He fired those people. We're standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people. We're supposed to sing. "I don't," she started, looking at her sisters. Christine's face was wet with tears. Clara's hands were shaking. Camille had gone completely pale. Lucas seemed to understand. He spoke quietly just for them. "You don't have to perform if you don't want to. If you'd rather, I can take you home right now. Get you food, warmth, medical attention for that cut. The performance doesn't matter." "It matters to Mama," Catherine said softly. "She always said. She said if we ever got a real stage, we had to make every note count, because chances like that don't come twice." "Your mother was right about many things," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "What would you like to sing?" "The lullaby," Clara said quietly. "The one Mama wrote. She made it for us when we were bobbies. She sang it every night." Lucas's face crumpled for just a moment. "Helen wrote a lullaby for her 4 daughters in the different world," Christine quoted softly. "That's what she called it." Lucas nodded, unable to speak. He walked to the microphone stand, adjusted it to Catherine's height, then stepped back. The audience had gone completely silent, some from shame, some from curiosity, some from the dawning realization that they'd just witnessed something extraordinary, a revelation that would be talked about for years. Clara sat at the piano, her fingers finding the keys. For a moment she closed her eyes, and Catherine knew she was remembering. Their mother's hands over hers, guiding, teaching, shaping talent from raw instinct. The first notes floated into the theater like a prayer. It was a simple melody, nothing complicated or showy, but it was pure, honest, beautiful in the way that truth is beautiful. Then Catherine began to sing. Her voice was untrained in the formal sense, but it carried something that technique couldn't teach: genuine emotion, pain and hope braided together, loss transformed into remembrance. 4 little stars in the darkest night, shining bright though the world's not right. Mama's here though she's far away, in every note, in every day. Christine joined her, their voices blending into harmony that shouldn't have been possible without years of training. But they'd had years of singing together in cramped apartments, in homeless shelters, in subway tunnels where their voices echoed off tile walls. Different faces, the same heart, never alone though we're apart. 4 little souls, one song to sing, 4 little girls, each one a wing. Camille added her voice, and the harmony became something transcendent. 3 parts moving around each other like they were dancing, like they'd been born knowing exactly how to complement each other. Clara's playing grew more confident, the melody swelling. And then she began to sing too, the final voice completing the quadruplet harmony. "Mama loves you, Mama's near. Even when she can't be here in your voices, I'll remain in your music, joy through pain." The theater had become a cathedral, every cough suppressed, every movement frozen. The audience had stopped being an audience and become witnesses to something sacred. Lucas stood at the edge of the stage, tears streaming down his face. He'd never heard this song. Helen had written it for their daughters, his daughters, and poured everything she was into it. Her talent, her love, her dreams. And the girls sang it like their lives depended on it. Because in a way, they did. This was the moment their mother had prepared them for. The moment when music stopped being just survival and became proof of their worth. The bridge built, all 4 voices soaring together. 4 little girls in the winter's cold, 4 brave hearts, 4 stories told. Mama's song will keep you strong. You were loved all along, all along. Catherine felt something shift inside her. For 6 weeks, she'd been drowning in grief and terror, and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping her sisters alive. But in this moment, singing her mother's words on a real stage in front of real people with her real father watching, she felt something else. Peace. Her mother had been right. Music did save them. Not in the way Catherine had imagined, not through earning money or food, but through connection, through proving they existed, through turning their pain into art that made people feel. She looked out at the audience and saw faces transformed, women crying openly, men wiping their eyes discreetly. The mayor's wife had her hand over her heart. The critic from the Times was scribbling furiously in his notebook. And Lucas, their father, looked like he was watching his entire world being rebuilt from ashes. The final verse came, softer now, intimate. When you're scared and all alone, sing this song. You're not on your own. 4 little stars, forever bright. Mama's love is your light, your light. The last note hung in the air for a breathless moment. Clara's hands stilled on the keys. The 4 girls stood together, identical and unique, vulnerable and powerful, broken and whole. And then the applause began. It started slowly, one person then another, but it built like a wave, crashing over the stage in rolling thunder. People stood. The entire theater rose to its feet. The applause became cheers. The cheers became something like reverence. Catherine saw it happening but couldn't quite believe it. Her vision was still blurred from tears. Her head still ached from the bottle. Her stomach still cramped with hunger. But for this moment, this perfect, impossible moment, they were not homeless children. They were musicians, artists, their mother's daughters. Lucas walked back onto the stage. The applause continued, but he raised his hand for silence. Gradually, the theater quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "you've just heard the most important performance that will ever take place on this stage. Not because it was perfect, though it was beautiful, but because it was true." He turned to the girls. "Catherine, Christine, Clara, Camille, I know I can't replace the years I missed. I can't bring your mother back. I can't erase what you've suffered. But I can promise you this, you will never be hungry again. You will never be cold again. You will never be alone again. You are my daughters, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for lost time." Christine let out a sob and launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Then Clara. Then Camille. Catherine stood frozen for a moment longer, unable to trust that this was real. Lucas met her eyes. "I know," he said softly. "I know you've been the one holding them together. I know you've been strong for so long. You can rest now." And something in Catherine finally broke, not shattered but opened. She walked into her father's arms, and for the first time since her mother died, she let herself cry. The audience watched in silence as Lucas held his 4 daughters, his body shaking with sobs he'd probably been holding back for 10 years. A family reunited. A tragedy transformed. An ending that was really a beginning. Behind them, the piano sat silent. The theater's grand stage had hosted operas and symphonies and performances by world-renowned artists, but it had never held anything as powerful as 4 little girls singing their mother's lullaby, their voices proof that love survives everything: poverty, separation, even death. Lucas pulled back, wiping his eyes. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home. I have a penthouse uptown. Too big for 1 person but perfect for 5. We'll order food, real food, anything you want. We'll get you warm clothes, medical care. And tomorrow we'll start figuring out the rest." "What about them?" Clara asked, gesturing at the audience still standing, still watching. "They can wait," Lucas said firmly. "My daughters come first." As they walked off the stage together, Lucas with his arms around all 4 girls, guiding them through the wings, the audience remained standing. Some were crying. Some looked ashamed. All of them knew they'd witnessed something that would change how they saw the world. The critic from the New York Times would write a review that would go viral by morning. "Last night at the Williams Theater, I expected to see a performance. What I witnessed instead was a revelation. 4 homeless children, quadruplets, daughters of the late Helen Harper, revealed not only extraordinary talent but the bankruptcy of our supposed civilized society. We laughed at them. We threw things at them. We treated them as less than human. And then they sang a lullaby that broke our hearts and showed us what real art looks like. Honest, raw, fearless." Lucas Williams discovered he had 4 daughters, but we all discovered something more important. That talent has nothing to do with wealth, that worth has nothing to do with status, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths. In the days that followed, the story would spread across the country. Videos of the performance, shaky cell phone footage from audience members, would be watched millions of times. The lullaby would be downloaded, covered, shared. Helen Harper's name would be resurrected, her legacy secured through her daughters' voices. But on that night, in a limousine driving through Manhattan streets, 4 little girls ate their first real meal in weeks while their father watched, memorizing their faces, asking questions about their mother, their lives, their dreams. "Did she really write that lullaby for us?" Lucas asked. "She sang it every night," Catherine confirmed, her mouth full of sandwich she couldn't eat fast enough. "Even when she was sick, even at the end, she made us promise to remember the words." "I wish I'd heard her sing it," Lucas said softly. "You did," Christine said, "through us. That's what Mama always said, that we were her voice continuing. That when she was gone, every time we sang, she'd be singing through us." Lucas nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then, "Tomorrow I want to hear all of you, not performing, just being. Playing piano if you want, singing if you feel like it, or just talking. I want to know everything, every story, every memory." "We have a lot of memories," Clara warned. "I have a lot of time," Lucas replied. "The rest of my life." The limousine pulled up to a building that touched the sky. A doorman rushed to open doors. Lucas ushered his daughters inside, through a lobby that looked like a museum, into an elevator that made Catherine's ears pop. The penthouse was larger than any space the girls had ever occupied. Windows overlooked the entire city, the same city that had been trying to kill them just hours ago. Now it spread below them like a map of possibilities. "4 bedrooms down that hall," Lucas said. "Pick whichever ones you want, or share one if that makes you more comfortable, whatever you need." The girls explored hesitantly, touching furniture like it might disappear, sinking into beds that felt like clouds, finding a bathroom with a tub big enough for all 4 of them. "Is this really happening?" Camille whispered. "I think so," Catherine said, "but I keep waiting to wake up in the subway station." "It's real," Lucas said from the doorway. "I promise you it's real, and I promise you I will never let you go. Your mother loved you more than anything, and so will I." He paused, then added, "She would be so proud of you, of how you survived, of how you took care of each other, of how you sang tonight. I know I didn't know her at the end, but I knew her when we were young, and she would be bursting with pride right now." Catherine felt fresh tears on her cheeks. "She told us to be brave." "You were," Lucas said. "You are. You're the bravest people I've ever met." That night the 4 girls fell asleep in one king-sized bed, tangled together like they'd been doing for weeks in doorways and shelters. But this time they were warm, full, safe. And in the morning when they woke up, their father would still be there. The lullaby had saved them after all. Not the notes themselves, but what the notes represented. A mother's love transcending death, a father's love awakening from ignorance, and 4 little girls who refused to let the world erase them. Helen Harper's daughters were home. What would you have done in Catherine's shoes? Would you have given up when they threw you out the first time? Or would you have fought like she did to make sure your mother's legacy, your voice, was heard? This story isn't just about 4 girls in a theater. It's about every time society judges worth by appearance instead of character, wealth instead of talent, status instead of soul. Those audience members laughed at homeless children, threw a bottle at a 10-year-old's head, because they saw poverty instead of people. Because they forgot that art, real art, comes from truth and pain and love, not from privilege. But here's what I love about this story. The truth won. Those 4 voices broke through the cruelty. Catherine and her sisters didn't just survive. They transformed an entire theater full of people who thought they were better than 4 little girls begging for bread. If this story made your blood boil at the injustice, if it made you cry when they sang, if it made you believe that courage and talent can overcome even the cruelest obstacles, then I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that like button if you believe every child deserves a chance, regardless of where they sleep at night. Comment Justice SERVED if you loved seeing Desmond and Madame Esther get fired for their cruelty. Let me know in the comments, what was the most powerful moment for you? Was it the lullaby, Lucas discovering his daughters, the standing ovation? I read every single comment and I want to hear your thoughts. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because I bring you stories like this every single week, stories of underdogs rising, truth prevailing, and justice being served. Stories that remind us that the world is full of Catherine, Christine, Clara, and Camille, people who are dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated until they're finally seen. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story today, someone who feels invisible, someone who's been told they're not good enough, someone who's fighting to be heard, share this video with them. Be the person who reminds them that their voice matters, that their story matters, that they matter. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. And remember, your voice, like Catherine's, like Helen's, has power. Use it. The world is listening. Now hit that like button, drop your comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story. Stay brave, stay compassionate, stay you.